We talking about sports, get ball.
What it do, you number one podcast listeners? I bet you feared you didn't think you'd hear from me again, but you can't get rid of me that easily.
Congratulations.
Welcome back to a brand new edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, the first of 2021. I am so glad to be back with you, and hopefully we built some suspense for you, and you will openly welcome this spicy episode with me on this first episode of the new year. It was only right that I have my big brother Vish with me. So Vish, welcome back to Prem Brulee.
Thanks, little bro. Excited to be back. I know it's been a long hiatus, I guess is the best way to put it, but a lot has happened since we've kind of heard you last, where you've heard all of us last. So, we wanted to make sure that we can kind of give you a little escape. There's some shitty stuff going on in the world right now. So it's just a matter of, hey, you can put the headphones in, blast it for your neighbors to hear, whatever it is. But we just want to make sure that you can share our sports misery, since that's kind of what the theme of today's episode will be.
Misery is the word. So hopefully, I mean, I've never been short of pain in my sports life, so hopefully you enjoy it. That's what we're here for. You nailed it. All right, it hasn't been that long, you number one podcast listeners. We're going to start with Yeah Fam or Nah, and today we're going to keep it short and sweet. Hopefully that's all right with you, Vish.
Yeah, it's good with me.
As we queued up at the beginning, we got a lot of spicy things to get to, so these are going to be short and sweet. It was only right that we start with what's fresh in our memories, the college football playoffs. So, Alabama won their sixth title in 12 years. They defeated our beloved Buckeyes from The Ohio State University, 52-24, in a quite dominating fashion. Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith had 12 catches for 215 yards, but he was the first receiver to win the Heisman since 91, and he marked 2 years in a row where the Heisman Trophy winner also won the national title, so that's a hell of a streak to start. But anyway, Devontae Smith apparently was a mystery to Ohio State only, but he had that stat line in just the first half. He injured his fingers at the beginning of the second half, so that right there was good enough for most outstanding player on offense in that game, and he played just 30 out of 60 minutes. Nick Saban, as you've all heard by now, he passes Bear Bryant for the most national championships of all time. He now has 7. Of course, people tend to forget his 1 at LSU, and then he's had 6 in those 12 years, like we mentioned. Kind of rewinding back in the semifinals, Alabama dominated Notre Dame as everybody expected, and Ohio State finally beat Clemson in tremendous fashion. More on that later, but that's kind of what set up the national title game. That was essentially, they used it all night long. It was a coronation. Alabama was the best team all year, and they proved it. So, yeah fam or not to this one, Vish? What do you got?
Yeah fam, because we all know if the Buckeyes didn't win, it's going to be an asterisk anyway. Shout out to our cousin Rush, who usually said that. So, I'm a yeah fam because this season didn't even count anyway.
Amen. Sound that shit, baby.
Petty alert, petty alert, petty alert.
Couldn't agree more. And for that reason, I'm a nah, because if it didn't count, let's run it back anyway. And maybe without the fucking COVID and the injuries on the Buckeyes. But
for sure, man.
Didn't happen, so what are we even talking?
I'm petty as hell.
Next up, the NFL playoffs. Obviously, they're still ongoing, but we started with a new format featuring 7 playoff teams in each conference. They coined it the Super Wildcard Weekend because instead of 2 games on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday, we got 3 games on each day. So I'll lead this one off. I'm a yeah fam to this new format. I like the 7 teams. I know some people thought it cheapened it, but I was all for it. I really dug having 3 games on Saturday and Sunday. The one part I don't necessarily love is the number 2 seed not getting a bye, but I realize I don't really have a great solution to achieve 7 teams and a bye for the 2nd seed. Then you could think about adding an 8th playoff team, but then you get kind of an NBA territory where you really have teams that don't deserve to be in, and you have half the league in the playoffs, which makes no sense. So giving the 2 seed a bye and under this format and this many teams making the playoffs would involve a whole format change. This kind of was the best of both worlds. I'm a yeah fan. I loved having football all day on both days of the weekend. So what do you got for this one?
First, I didn't know there were people that thought this would be cheapened. I certainly understand as a 2 seed, you might not get that bye, which is okay. At the end of the day, they also faced, the team that kind of snuck in or wasn't that very good. So if they were one of the top seeds, it is more or less kind of like a bye, almost like a tune-up game too, before you kind of have to wait potentially the winner of a 3-4 matchup, which are typically division winners or what that looks like. So at the end of the day, I think it kind of helps, and we'll really see this weekend, right? I think it's great to have more football games, but we'll see if the Chiefs and Packers were able to use that extra time. It seemed like the Chiefs haven't played in like 3 weeks because I know Mahomes was out in week 17. So we'll really see if that extra time pays off, especially this year.
And interesting to note, like the last few years, the Super Bowl contenders have all come from bye weeks. So now, obviously, that's whittled down to just one team on each side having a bye week. So we'll see how that's impact. Oh, I do have one more thing with the NFL playoffs. I have this like kind of format change that I would love to incorporate. I think that the top seed should get to pick their opponent after that first wild card weekend.
Interesting.
So, like, I was thinking about this because, the Washington football team was a 4 seed. And if they would have won, the top seed Packers wouldn't have played them because the Rams won. They were as the 6 seed. Based on the rules, the Packers play the lowest remaining seed. I think the top seed should get to pick, because then you add a whole nother layer. If Washington hypothetically in this situation made it, oh wow, the Packers wanted to play us, so then you have that whole bulletin board material, and it adds a whole nother level of complexity. So that's my theory on, most times that would result in the top seed playing the lowest seed, but I would love the opportunity to be able to like pick.
Yeah,
because like if Aaron Donald was healthy, do the Packers want to play him?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to kind of think about it and add some more competitive juice and more fire. I know we're going to talk a little bit about some trash talking and how it works against some teams as well. So some foreshadowing if you haven't already known that already. But that would be fascinating, even if it's like a reseeding based on record instead of that. And obviously division winners, if they continue to make it and they're there, that they would get the home game in the AFC or NFC championship game if it comes out that way. But yeah, I like.
Last but not least, the NBA and COVID. NBA has started a new season, and it is clear that the bubble days are gone beyond a doubt. The league has already had to postpone multiple games for teams because the teams did not have 8 players available to dress. That's the minimum they've set. They have reportedly agreed on advanced protocols to mitigate the spread that's clearly happening in the NBA. So this is all per Woj of ESPN. He said the NBA and NBA Players Association were working through a minimum 2-week window of protocol tightening that includes no hugging or interaction of rival players on court, pregame and postgame. They are reducing social interactions during games, including tapping hands during free throws. For home games, players are to pretty much just stay at home or go to the team facility, nothing outside of that. And away games, they're limited to staying at their hotel, no interaction with non-NBA personnel. So apparently guests were allowed in the hotel rooms. Make with that what you will. But that is no longer allowed temporarily. And they used to have like a list of restaurants that were okay. That is no more. So kind of creating like a little temporary quick bubble in each city they go to. With all that said, I wonder, FM or not, a lot of people feel the league should pause play. Are you in agreement with that?
So first and foremost, I think you forgot one thing. They actually are thinking about putting a hand sanitizer station at half court, like in the middle of the court, just so that as players are passing by, they just have to kind of squeeze and get some hand sanitizer, sanitize up. Maybe a sink eventually is going to be in the session, and you wash, and you just got to kind of, sing your ABCs, and you're good to go before you can dap someone up or shoot a free throw or continue on.
I want to see someone mess up and like the refs have to call a technical foul or something.
And then you end up having to forfeit. So pausing, I think I'm a YAFAM on this. And I say this because I think this is something that the NBA should have thought about. And I know they explored it coming into it. And really just having some small bubbles throughout and having 8 or 10 teams at a time, really kind of do a round robin, play one another, and then break. Have like a 2-week break, switch locations, switch teams, kind of go into a different area.
Great idea.
And then do it again. I think that's something that could potentially work. I don't know if it will, just depending on what state and some of the protocols that they have. The NHL should also do something similar. I know we're not big hockey guys on this podcast anymore, but
we're huge hockey experts.
They actually realigned the divisions. I think you probably saw this, and it made sense regionally, but we're still seeing these cases. So at the end of the day, the pandemic's still out there. The virus exists. We see the vaccine coming around, but it's still going to be a while. And speaking of hockey, go Jackets.
Go hockey, baby.
There you go.
Suit them up, baby. You know the vibes. Yeah, I'm a fan to this. I think they should pause play right now and see if they can kind of get it under control before they restart, and then start these protocols after they've given it a little quarantine period. Everybody gets a chance to recoup, but I know they have bills they got to pay essentially.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I think part of it and pausing the play is, with Kevin Durant, someone like that out for the Nets for a week. In the NFL, you miss maybe a game, right? And that's not a big deal. Yeah. But in the NBA, missing 10 days could be a few games, and especially in a shortened NBA season already. And with a tight Eastern Conference and Western Conference, those seedings will matter. And you certainly want to get past the 7 seed in both conferences so you're not doing the play-in game and have a chance to be out of the playoffs. So it's going to be just very, very fascinating just to see how it all ends up coming out. But and even in that sort of scenario, a team can just say, hey, we want to kind of reserve our right and play more games at a later on period because we have too many players out right now. And so instead of the 8 to 10 teams, that's where you can kind of play around with some of the functions and the virus, really how it happens.
Agreed. All right. We promised this. We made it quick with Yeah Fam or Not. You know what time it is. This is what you've been waiting for. This is what we built all this suspense over this last month and a half over. It's time for You Played Yourself. Joker, hit it, baby.
And I'm super petty. Here we Petty Le Pew. Go.
That's right, you number one podcast listeners. Hopefully we are able to let you escape through our venting. So, without further ado, I have a few I want to start with. I know you have a big one to get off your chest, Vish. And that's a huge reason, other than the fact that I love you and wanted you on this podcast. But there's a lot going on with one of your favorite teams. So we're going to build to that. Obviously, we want to start with the smaller. First up with You Played Yourself, NFL teams who won meaningless games and hurt their draft stock. I am looking directly at you, New York Jets, for missing out on a once-in-a-decade QB prospect in Trevor Lawrence. I cannot believe that those wins were worth it. You had your fucking defense coordinator you fired, run an all-out blitz on a game you were going to win earlier in the season for this purpose so that you could have the one pick, and then you fuck around and win not one, but two games in a row. You utterly played yourself, and I guess time will tell how much you played yourself, but you played.
The Jets also beat two playoff teams that are also playing this weekend, the Rams and the Browns. So, I mean, there was every reason to be like, we'll mail it in. And maybe you try against the Patriots because of a division rival and you hate the Patriots, but come on, man. Like, God.
Unbelievable. In the driver's seat for a once in a decade, once in a generation, however you want to bill it, Trevor Lawrence is the real deal. Anyway, next up, speaking of top of the draft, the Bengals. They played their way out of Penei Sewell after having an abysmal offensive line result in their franchise quarterback, whom they just drafted last year, Joe Burrow, getting hurt. They set him up for failure behind that fucking Swiss cheese offensive line, and they had a chance at a amazing offensive tackle prospect, and they fucked around and won a couple games, including adding to the Steelers' woes at the end of the year. And here they are. I guess they're going to have to reach for maybe Slater out of Northwestern. It's just Penei Sewell, and then there's a pretty significant drop, and they played their way out of it. Even
if they go and trade up to get this guy, they're going to have to give up other capital. So again, playing yourself, the general theme. And, I think the last team I'm going to set this up because is these meaningless games is our very own, which we've heard time and time again, but this was one of those opportunities where could have played in the playoffs, but why the hell, and take it away, little bro.
You knew this was coming. I tried to say, like, I was done with them. Last time you heard from me, and I promise, I pretty much was done with them. I was watching, I was laughing at them pretty much all year. And then, what did these stupid-ass Dallas Cowboys do? They went on their first fucking win streak in over a year when they needed it the least. They won 3 games in a row and set themselves up, yes, for an NFC East title that meant what? Jack shit? Because Washington ended up winning. The Eagles ended up resting Jalen Hurts at the end of the game with the clear example of tanking. For no reason, they won these 3 games, setting themselves up for a possibility at an NFC East title and just to get their shit tossed by Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, just like Washington did. The Cowboys, weeks before this stupid-ass win streak, when they were sitting just shitty defense, shitty roster, everything, bad luck, you name it. They were projected for number 4 pick. Number 4 pick. Weeks later, we fast forward, their final result, where are they going to be drafting? Number fucking 10. This is how you fucking stay mediocre. Exactly this. Exactly this way. And real quick, like while I'm at it, I know this is off on a tangent. Surprise, surprise. You're not fucking surprised. Here we go.
Me hard. I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
Okay. You wanted this. The hiatus, it called for this. Can I just share with you, Vish, how the Dallas Cowboys wide receivers finished? So there's a lot of hype, obviously. They drafted CeeDee Lamb. He fell to them. Perfect. They were talking about having 1,000 yards receiving, all 3 of them. They were actually this fucking close from achieving that on this sorry-ass roster. Amari Cooper had 1,114 yards receiving. CeeDee Lamb had 935. If not for some crucial drops, he probably would have got 65 over the course of the year. And Michael Gallup, despite being hurt a few games, had 843 yards.
My God.
They almost accomplished it. They had Ben DiNucci start a game. They had Garrett Gilbert off the street start a game. And then they had, whatever Andy Dalton you call him, they still almost managed 1,000 yards each. And then, like, somehow the Monstars came and stole Ezekiel Elliott's talent this year, right? He had 979 yards rushing somehow. When did that happen? When did he rush for 979 yards? Did they play another game I didn't know about? And then they added 435 yards from Tony Pollard. So together, they had 1,400 yards rushing and almost 3 1,000-yard receivers. With a backup offensive lineman, 3 different quarterbacks post-Dak injury. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering just how bad these other quarterbacks are, Dak Prescott finished 32nd in passing in the league after playing just basically 4.5 games. That number is good for just 313 yards behind Andy Dalton's 11 games. In case you were wondering just how well this season panned out and how important those fucking 3 wins were. I say all this with the full intention of making this point. These last 2 seasons, all these offensive stats, there's never been a more clear example that the Dallas Cowboys need to draft all defense in this 2021 draft. For the love of all football gods, draft all defense. Every single goddamn pick put towards your defense, Dallas, because the numbers are there on offense. You're not fucking cutting it. In a division where 7-9 won it all, these offensive stats didn't get you a division title. So fucking work on your goddamn defense for once in your fucking life, Jerry Jones. Fuck. Anyway, you guys got what you wanted here. Here we are, all fired up. Here we go to the open your mouth when you shouldn't section of You Played Yourself. First up, to come to the front of the congregation, these fucking Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool.
Corvette.
Juju Smith-Schuster opened his mouth saying the Browns is the Browns. Also what we all say when someone asks us how our poop went, I guess. I don't know. This man, Juju, continually opens his mouth and continually opens his fucking dance moves for the whole team to answer. My least favorite type of athlete. When you talk all this shit, but you're leaving it up to this whole fucking team that has to answer for your bullshit. Did they ask you to open your goddamn mouth? No, they didn't. And then Chase Claypool, after they've already lost to the fucking Browns, by the way, he's talking shit about a backup cornerback. The Browns were riddled by COVID. If you were playing a backup, shouldn't you have produced better? Shouldn't you have fucking won against the Browns, your division rival? If your fellow wide receiver said the Browns is the Browns, what the fuck does that make you? The fucking toilet that the poop drops in?
Wait, first of all, you're not going to speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
What kind of soft-ass shit is... I promise I wrote that before. That wasn't meant to... I don't know why this is turning into a poop thing, but whatever. We'll go with it.
I'm wondering. I'm like, this is going down a very dark hole.
Dark hole. Nice. I see what you did there. There we go.
There you go. Got you.
See, I have so many people in my life that are Steelers fans that I want to be happy. But you must really be a... Like, for lack of better terms, you must really be a fuck if you outweigh all those people. Like, you are that dumb. You open your mouth that stupidly that it makes me disregard all those people that I want happy just because I want to see your shit talking. Cut the fuck off. You got something to add with these clowns?
Yeah, I know we went down some poop references and all of that, but I mean, it's enough. You know, the Steelers are the Steelers, and I meant that, right? I mean, they're not very good. We'll get back to that in terms of, but really, I mean, these are wide receivers that have a shitty ass run game also.
Yep.
They're only there for the dances, whatever it is. And Chase Claypool, you know, after the game, I get it. Your butt hurt. Damn it. Another poop joke. There
Wow.
we go. We're at this, baby. I get it. You're upset.
Sometimes you just got to let it rip. You know what I'm saying?
You just got to let it run, baby.
You're great.
It stinks for Juju because I think he is a good player. He is a free agent. You know, I think it's going to kind of go against him because it seems like he is a locker room issue. And, like, who really wants that? You know,
but it's just an annoyance. Like, he's a good dude outside of it. Like, why do you need to do all that?
It's outrageous. I mean,
like, nobody's fucking going to talk about you. Like, if you do a dance, like, yeah, we know you're like a little kid, but you have to do it on the opponent's logo at the 50. It's just little shit like that. Like, are you a child? That's what that makes me think.
Yeah, for TikTok, who cares? It's different if you're doing it just to get in someone else's mind, but you're doing it for a video that you're posting online.
It's not working. It's costing them. And you're right. Juju and Chase Claypool, they are phenomenal, but they also represent a major issue in why the Steelers fizzled out and why their recipe didn't work, because they had to get the ball to their receivers and had, like you said, no run game, and that fucking cost them. And the whole narrative is the Steelers are going to have to rework how they built this team after they lost. I mean, they lost 4 out of their last 5, so you're right. It should have been the Steelers as the Steelers.
Well, and I know all the talking heads, they kind of even referenced it during the game. Ben Roethlisberger is owed $41 million next year. $41 million. Meanwhile, you have a guy like Dak who finishes 32nd in the league, only playing 4 games. And you have Ben Roethlisberger who is like thinking that he's hurt, wearing a walking boot as it goes down the field. I mean, just ridiculous. And we won't even get into his personal history and how shitty of a person he actually is. But yeah. It's just they're in a world of hurt and mess coming up here in the next.
Crazy when you think about they start 11-0. Speaking of opening your fucking mouth when you shouldn't, you played yourself. You knew this was coming, and part of the reason I wanted to rush back to this after a little hiatus was because of this man right here. You played yourself, Dabo fucking Sweeney. I mean this with every fiber of my being. I fucking hate you.
Petty alert. Petty alert.
This
Petty
man,
alert.
we know it by now. He ranked Ohio State number 11 in his final coaches poll. 11, huh? What the fuck does that make you, huh? You getting fucking owned in the Sugar Bowl by this team you ranked 11. This man went out of his way to bury Ohio State from the jump. Like, it had nothing to do with conference, had nothing to do with another contender that he wanted in, because he opened his Juju Smith-Schuster big-ass mouth. And then, after he gets a shit toss, righteous Dabo, he tries to backtrack on the podium and act like he didn't disrespect Ohio State all week, when regardless of what you think, they felt disrespected. So you could tell us you weren't disrespecting them, but you disrespected them.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
And then asked whether he regretted any of it. He said, quote, "No, I don't regret any of that."
Hey, those are cool tats, man. I mean, what is this one?
Oh, this? Uh-huh. That's my credo. No regrets.
You have no regrets? Like, not even a single letter?
So I finally pinpointed what feels so good about, like, being able to rub it in for people like Dabo or Juju.
Corvette.
It's because, like, people like that remind you of every bully you've ever seen having to eat their dumbass words. It's like every single example that you get to talk shit to someone who's talked shit their whole life. It is that big ass payoff where, like, if they didn't open their mouth, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But here they are. They just yap and go out of their way to produce bulletin board material. And it feels so fucking good when they're wrong, because you talked all this shit and then you have to eat your words. And it feels so fucking good because it's not fucking bad for number 11, is it? Not fucking bad, Dabo, huh?
You know, I think you said everything that I would have felt and said. You know, I know someone's like, oh, well, you know, Ohio State didn't play enough games and all of that. Look, even if you took into account all the other teams that before bowl season and all of that, at worst, you could have had Ohio State at 7. You know, you put some teams ahead of them, but 11 behind some 3-loss teams, some teams that, like, have no business being ahead of the Buckeyes. And that's just eye test. So as a fucking coach, like, just, it's okay to say, hey, I don't believe that they played enough games, but if they had 4 more extra games, I mean, they're probably hanging 100 on Michigan. They put up 48 against your sorry ass. So what do you think they're going to do against a team like fucking the team up north? So, you know, I think you said everything that they did, but man, sometimes you just got to shut your mouth. And also he doubled down. Why the hell would you double down? Hey, you know, I get it. I said that they're a really good team still. Well, okay, that's part of polls. You can rank them where you think they should be ranked if they had the same amount of games. It's all hypothetical, but don't give bulletin board material if you don't need to.
I mean, on behalf of Buckeye Nation, like, thank you for that, because as if they didn't have a chip on their shoulder enough from how controversial last year's Fiesta Bowl was, then you gave them added incentive. I want to address the national championship. We promised that we would at the top during Yafim or Nah, so pains me to do it. Before I turn it over to you to have the floor and finish out, you played yourself. Pains me to do this. You played yourself goes to the Ohio State Buckeyes. You hate to hear it. Remember, you know what the rules are. No one is exempt. The last episode, if you think back, we had to have LeBron in this section. Now it's the Bucks. I mean, talk about getting outcoached.
Yep.
My goodness. My goodness, did Sark own Kerry Coombs and the Bucks defense. Like, I don't think I've ever before this game seen a defensive back get beat pre-snap. But Ohio State starting corners, Sevin Banks and Sean Wade, you could just tell. Like, I was watching that game when they send Devontae Smith in motion, and you see the corners shadowing them. They're just jogging, trying to, while he motions across the field. They're jogging. They're already a step behind before the ball's even snapped. I've never seen anything like it. And if I don't see that out of every big team in the country next year, they're doing it wrong. Because it was an absolute clinic on how to get your best players the ball. Fuck a double team. Let's just motion him zigzag in the backfield like you're playing backyard football. And another thing. 4 fucking linebackers against this historic passing attack. 4 linebackers. 2 of which are Pete Warner and Tough Borland. Slow as fucking molasses. And that was the strategy. Even after halftime, they were on the field. I'm serious when I say, I know I joked about at the top, like, I think the Buckeyes actually might have missed the Heisman ceremony after Justin Fields didn't make it, because they had to have not known about Devontae Smith. That's the only thing I can think of. The lazy jogging behind him and ending a play with Tough Borland matched up against him. The minute you see that alignment and you see that Tough Borland is going to have to cover Devontae Smith, call a fucking timeout.
Yeah.
I don't understand that stubbornness where People do it all the time. They don't like the look of a play on offense or defense. Call a fucking timeout and regroup.
Yeah. I think you said everything that I was thinking, and those that follow both of us on Twitter, we were kind of like tweeting the same thing without even talking to one another, which is crazy. I hate to come up with excuses, but some of the injuries that we had were just going to be too hard to overcome. That being said, we had to adjust as a coaching staff to actually say, like, we have two of our defensive linemen out. Like, we can't run this 4-4 defense because we're not going to get to the quarterback. We're not going to control Najee Harris. And shout out to him for actually saying that the Buckeye defense, like, showed up and actually hit him. I know you probably saw that quote earlier today. And that's a huge kudos to that. But Sark,
he really didn't have a ton of yards. Najee Harris, he was, despite how bad the defense looked, he didn't really get his in the running game. But that's not what we needed to stop.
Well, and to that point, like, Devontae Smith, stop him, double cover him, let other receivers beat you. And Alabama is super talented, and Sark would have just beat us no matter what. But they came in with just a game plan. They knew what Ohio State had in play. They were able to adjust that, hey, if we see this defense, we're going to go to this thing. And they just controlled the clock, which we haven't seen Alabama really do this year for the few times I actually saw them play. So it actually just kept their defense on the field. And especially when you have four linebackers in that setting, the more they're running around, the tireder they get. And as the game wears on, and that's really where the second quarter, Alabama just put their foot on our fucking throat, and that was it. And there was just no coming back from it, especially with the amount of punts and the field goal that we ended up resorting to. I mean, that was it. So, and it sucks that we weren't healthy, and Sermon going out at the second play of the game. I know that kind of changed the offense, and especially with Fields not being 100%, but it just sucked. Like, we weren't going to win, really, with all the cards.
100%. Wasn't our year, and it especially was Alabama. All right, so I built this up for you. It is time to give my bro the floor. He's got some team that he allegedly roots for that he needs to talk about. So,
oh, fuck, man.
The mic is yours.
Man, I just really don't know where to start. So, for our listeners, whether you see it or not, this past few weeks, as the NFL is in this super wild card weekends, which we talked about, the Texans are at the top of the fucking headlines. Behind me, and my brother can nod and approval and see it, I have my Andre Johnson jersey sitting up. So really what happens throughout all this, and I'll kind of go down it. I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not going to bore you with the fucking details because of this joke of the franchise. But Andre Johnson tweeted. He tweeted, and I'll share this with you, if I'm Deshaun Watson, I will stand my ground. The Texans organization is known for wasting players' career. Since Jack Easterby has walked into the building, nothing good has happened in/for the organization. And for some reason, someone can't seem to see what's going on. Pathetic. 3 exclamation points. DeAndre Hopkins, who was recently traded this offseason, retweeted Andre Johnson and said, when Dre speak, listen. My fucking God. I don't know where to start. That hasn't already been said, so just here goes nothing. First and foremost, Deshaun Watson did not... Wait,
hold on 1 sec before you...
Yeah.
I think it's important to get some context, in case you guys forgot. Andre Johnson's probably the most notable Texans alum in their short history. He was a fucking sensation, and he does not open his mouth often. Yeah. So I think it's important to have that context that he tweeted, and that part is actually news. He tweeted. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, good point. So first, Deshaun Watson didn't ask to be included. So that's the important part that I think gets missed through all this. He didn't ask to be included with the GM or head coach position. His meeting with the owner actually just kind of promised Deshaun, hey, we'll include you. So Deshaun wasn't even looking for it. And to be honest, in any other situation, an NFL player should never have any say into what goes on in management decisions, personnel decisions, because that sets up your organization to really fail. So I don't think that Watson would have thought twice, like, hey, we're not going to really include you because this is just part of it, but, we'd love for you to still understand and meet with the coach and GM whenever they're hired, and we'll kind of look at all of that. They already had a consultant firm looking at all of this. They already had individuals that were helping them with the searches and all of that. That being said, as I referenced it before, this is a joke of a fucking franchise. They could have had the third pick in this year's draft. You went on this spree already around draft picks. Nope. It's Miami's, who barely missed the playoffs. They have the number 3 pick overall. They wasted an MVP year by Deshaun Watson. You've probably heard of this because everyone is still saying it. Like, his stats are on a different level. No one has put up the stats he has and lost that many games, let alone half that many games. They went 4-12 because they couldn't put together a full decent game. And it's just sad that we wasted a full year on that. I think everyone saw J.J. Watt walking off with Watson and saying, sorry, we wasted your year. I mean, how fucking, heartbreaking is that to see? I know me, Roche, Nick, my uncle, who are all Texans fans, were just like, holy crap, this fucking sucks. And all of this because of Jack Easterby. Who? Now, there was an SI report that came out probably in early December that highlighted some cultural issues around how Jack Easterby came up through the ranks. We don't really know what his resume looks like. How is he in football operations and all of that? Whatever people think of this report and referencing this SI report, the fact that Andre fucking Johnson tweeted about him should tip you off. Like you mentioned, Prem, you know, a few months back when Rush and I were here to talk about Bill O'Brien being fired, and we talked about the GOAT, Andre Johnson, kind of being let go for no fucking reason. Yeah. You know, Andre Johnson is the best Texan to ever play. And I think that includes J.J. Watt. That will include Deshaun Watson because he was the first one to do that. He is the only Texan right now in their Ring of Honor. To tell you just a little bit about what Andre is, I think those that know me from a really long time know that Andre Johnson was basically my profile picture in Facebook a long time ago and all of that. And so he is just the GOAT. He gets it, a true professional. His latest, so to speak about how often he tweets, his latest non-ad tweet or retweet that he had was April 24th, 2019. The tweet itself, Dame Lillard, man, that was crazy. End tweet. That was it. The rest have been crowned royal ads or him joining the NFL Network when he was on set on December 1st. L-O fucking L. Like, are you shitting me? Also, Andre was on staff in 2019. Last year, he was on the Texans staff as special counsel or whatever the fuck his title was. Wow. So he actually has firsthand knowledge of the situation because he was actually special counsel to Bill O'Brien and Brian Gaine. And so when those two people were actually fired, or eventually both of them were fired by really what seems to be Jack Easterby, like Andre has that firsthand knowledge. And it's not something that he would say publicly out, but the fact that people are supporting Deshaun Watson also speaks for Watson himself. I mentioned around the consultant firm that the Texans hired around their GM search, their head coaching search. They threw hundreds of thousands of dollars. We talked about a pandemic and how people are still suffering. And meanwhile, there's this organization that's just throwing away money for no reason and going against anything they had. Andre was also on a separate special counsel, as reported by the NFL Network. It was with him, Tony Dungy, and Jimmy Johnson, other NFL legends. Wow. So the fact that he tweeted, and this was also part of what happened, of how Andre was going to be part of the next GM and head coach, just an advisory role. Oh my God, like holy crap. And speaking of God, let's just get back to Easterby. Because if you don't know him, he was the Patriots pastoral. And again, this is not about religion. Those that know me, I'm okay sharing that I'm not very religious. We grew up religious. That's okay. I have friends that are religious. No harm done. I get it. It's fine. But the fact that it's coming up time and time again as an issue means that what you're doing is not right. You can't just bank on, hey, because of whatever higher power you believe in, that's why things are going to be okay. No, it doesn't fucking work that way. If it's not obvious to Easterby or I should say, let me back up. If it's not obvious to Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans, or anyone in that organization to fire Easterby, then he should just resign. He's causing so much turmoil within this organization that it is actually anti-Christian to do that. Like it seems like he's sinning every single day because he is scheming. He's going behind people's backs. He's fake. He's all of those types of things. And that's just me reading these types of things and trying to formulate who this guy is. And again, I don't know Easterby. He's probably a lovely guy, but the fact that there's this many people speaking out against him, and not just Andre Johnson, Texans beat writers who obviously are kissing Cal McNair's ass day in and day out. They're speaking up against Easterby. All the NFL beat writers are like, how the hell is he in power? And how is he still in power? Like, get a fucking grip. As to Watson, and this is going on a huge ass rant, it's really hard to blame him. I'm sorry. I usually try to see the best of what's in the franchise. Watson sucked it up when his best friend and one of the best receivers in the game, and that's a present verb, one of the best wide receivers in the game right fucking now. He could have smoked. He could have figured out, oh man, this fucking sucks, but he didn't. And really the franchise could have actually traded Hopkins this offseason. They were like, hey, we're not going to get to a contract, get to the number, and actually get a better trade offer than what they got. I don't think any Texan fan in the right mind has any issue with Hopkins being traded away because of the cap hell that we're kind of currently in with having to pay Watson and all of that. But getting the return that we got, and we've already been down this road, but so I'll hush it on that. But Watson stayed hushed. He was upset internally, and he went out and just bawled out. He made Chad Hansen, Kiki Cutie, superstar names. And those that play fantasy football, they know because they had to pick them up in like week 14 and 15, and they actually got good production out of it. More than Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool or whatever the fuck his name is.
Clay Chasepool. That's what we're going to call him from now on. Clay Chasepool.
There you go. Gosh, I'm like riled up. But Watson stayed hushed. And then he stays hushed for things that are just continually happening because he knows anything that he's going to say right now is just going to not work well for him. And he's getting backup from around the league in so many different settings, as I've already gone over. Lastly, I've already tweeted this. I probably tweeted this 4 or 5 days ago. I'm going where Deshaun Watson goes. So if Deshaun Watson really gets traded, and this is no joke, the Andre Johnson jersey, I will still respect the fandom that I had and all of that, but I'm following Watson wherever he goes, leaving the franchise behind. It sucks because I really think Caserio is a good GM. I think he could really be great for the Texans and turn this ship around and figure out what to do with the third round pick this year instead of without first or second, and really get this team over the hump, get a good head coach and all of that. And we didn't even get into the head coaching part, but I know I've gone on long enough. I'm getting heated. I need to take another sip of my beer right now and actually just chill out because for now I am just fucking over it.
Yes, feel the power. Feel it. I'm not the only one. It runs in the family. You already know. See, that was worth you getting like the final. You played yourself. I had to build to that because that's what we came for, baby.
Oh man.
All right.
And going back to the poop stuff, like that wasn't even the amount of shit that I could have put on the Texans right there. And how frustrated I am.
You could say holy shit to shout out Easterby. All right, so now we're moving on to who you got, what you feeling. I'm going to do a little recap from a previous episode. It was a while ago, so I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. The last episode that was recorded was me and Roche, and we were talking about the worst teams in the NFL and the most disappointing teams. Just kind of a nice little exercise here because it was mid-season or so. The worst team in the NFL, Roche and I both went with the Jets. He also mentioned the Jags, and it turned out both are right, but I would argue that the Jets were worse because they were worse and won at the worst times. At least the Jags were better at losing. And the Jags are objectively, I mean, maybe not objectively, that it is subjective, but they're probably in a better situation due to cap and their draft capital than the Jets are. And the fact that they're going to have Trevor Lawrence. Anyway, the most disappointing team, Roche went with the Cowboys. Can't lie, I'm even more disappointed than I was at that time. And I went with the Patriots because they truly were, I mean, it was not like them to miss the playoffs like this. And Cam Newton really fizzled out. I think he ended up producing a decent amount, but they really just stayed middle of the road. And it looks like they're going to move on from Cam.
I think the other team that sorry, just to interrupt real quick. I think the other team that we would add like end of season would actually be the Arizona Cardinals. They aside from a Hopkins true Hail Mary that he caught, they would have finished below 500, which is insane for the amount of talent they have, the coaching. If I'm a Cardinals fan, I don't know too many, but I mean, I would just be really frustrated with just Cliff Kingsbury and just how the offense really fell off, really mid-year. And so I would actually just say after that period, the Cardinals were actually worse. You know, we could see the Patriots, we could see the Cowboys, especially after Dak went down, but the Cardinals really didn't have any injuries. You know, they were pretty healthy all year round, and they couldn't put it together.
And then we picked the first Clemson Notre Dame game, in which Clemson was up without Trevor Lawrence. Notre Dame survived in overtime, and then they had a rematch in the ACC championship game in which Clemson just owned. But anyway, we're on to, hopefully your blood pressure's returning to normal, but we are on to this episode's picks, and I wanted to get your picks for the NFL playoffs. So obviously we all know by now the 4 games that will happen are the number 1 Packers in the NFC facing the 6 seed Rams. The 2 seed in the NFC, the New Orleans Saints, will face the number 5 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a battle of old quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Over in the AFC, the Chiefs will play the number 6 seed Browns, and also another AFC North team that one is the lower seed. The Ravens will head to Buffalo and face the 2 seed Buffalo Bills. The biggest spread is the Chiefs by 10 against the Browns. Other than that, the Packers are roughly a touchdown favorite against the Rams. The Rams might be with a limited Aaron Donald, which obviously bodes a little way better for the Packers, considering Aaron Donald is a literally created in a lab and a freak of nature. So I want your picks, like who is making the conference championship games? Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the Saints Bucks are basically a pick 'em, and as are the Bills Ravens, which is actually interesting. I have Chiefs Bills in the AFC Championship game, the top 2 seeds, and then I have the Packers and the Bucks finally beating the Saints this year. In the NFC Championship, I think Tom Brady and his offense are clicking right at the right time, and that's kind of who I have. I'm taking the points for Green Bay and the Chiefs, and obviously I think the Bills beat the Ravens by a little bit more than 2 points, but that's where I'm at.
I got the same picks. I truly feel that Saints Bucks game is a toss up. I think it could be quite the offensive show, but the Saints defense is really good. So if they can pull together a few stops or turnovers, then it could get out of hand and we could be very wrong about it. I want to know which is more impressive to you. Speaking of the Browns, was it more impressive that the Browns won or that the Steelers lost, given the circumstances, them starting 11-0? And then obviously losing 4 out of their last 5 to end the season. What was more impressive, or maybe the better word is like, what was more shocking? And especially given the circumstance, I think painting the circumstance is obviously very important to this game because the Browns were without so many coaches, including Kevin Stefanski. They were without key players like Denzel Ward in the secondary. So it truly was like they practiced, I think, for the first time on Friday for their game on Sunday night. So which was more impressive?
Yeah, I think even with Denzel Ward out and Joel Bitonio, I mean, those are some big names to be out for the Browns. And so I think that the Browns won is actually more impressive, given everything that they were dealing with the past week, really not being without their head coach, arguably the NFL coach of the year, really this year, and what they were able to do with the Browns. I'm not really worried about Steelers losing in the postseason. You know, really quickly, I know before we get the take, and we're kind of up on time already, but after the Steelers lost to the Packers in 2010's Super Bowl. Since then, the Steelers have lost to Tim Tebow in 2011. They lost to Joe Flacco in 2014, 30-17. They did beat the Bengals in the postseason, 18-16, and the Bengals were actually led by A.J. McCarron, just going back to Alabama. They ended up losing to Peyton Manning, which I think is okay. Then they played Miami in 2017. They beat Matt Moore. Who? Then they beat Alex Smith in a divisional round in 2017, 18-16. This is without the Chiefs being with Patrick Mahomes and all of that. And then they got crushed by Tom Brady and the Patriots, 36-17. And then the last few times, in 2018, the Steelers lost to Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the Jaguars' first and only season, I think, in the last 7 or 8 years where they didn't have double-digit losses. And they were actually down at one point, 21-0, to Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Oh, sound familiar? Because this past year, nothing against Baker Mayfield because I love his progressive commercials, I'm not going to lie. But they got housed by the Cleveland Browns. They just were not in the game. And people just think that the Steelers have this culture, but they don't. You've seen the people afterwards look at the formations. There was a 3rd and 2, and this is a general trend, and not to get back into specifics and all of that, but they had a linebacker, and we talked about a linebacker on wide receivers already with Alabama and Ohio State. A professional football team that was the last undefeated team this year had a linebacker on Jarvis Landry on a 3rd down late in the game.
Unbelievable.
Are you kidding me? How does that even happen? And the Steelers were not in a 4-4, Prem. They had 4 defensive backs. They were in a nickel or a dime during that formation.
A fucking timeout, man.
Just insane. So it is a lot more impressive that the Browns won. The Steelers losing is nothing new because they fall short year in and year out. And I think they're in a world of trouble, especially if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't rally. And I would blame him if he does rally because he would be owed $41 million if things don't change. Why wouldn't you come back?
Yeah, I agree. It was more impressive by the Browns. Given their circumstances, it was truly improbable. And the manner in which they won was unbelievable how crazy of a start that was. Given the NFL head coaching job openings, I wanted to get your take on which one you thought was the best and which one you thought was the worst. So real quick, I think we are all pretty aware of these. There are 7 openings. The surprising one was obviously the Eagles most recently, the Chargers, Jags, Jets, Lions, Falcons, and, of course, the subject of today's rant, the Texans. So who do you have for the worst opening and who do you have for the best opening out of those 7?
At the end of the day, I think the Eagles is absolutely the worst. Carson Wentz. It just seems like a very messy situation. Hurts and really just the amount of players they have, an older roster, it seems like, and just really no people at skill positions. So it seems like the worst, but I think being in the division, it's probably a winnable division to be in the playoffs. And I think the best is probably the Chargers. I think they have a great quarterback. They have great skill position players. They have great defensive players. They were actually very hurt on defense. And, they lost Derwin James early in the year, and they just were depleted in many fronts. So if they come back and they're healthy, they have, and Austin Eckler is just phenomenal. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can run it off tackle, between tackle, whatever it is. It's something that I think Chargers is certainly the best. And I would say because of what you said earlier, Jags are right up there because of you get Trevor Lawrence and you get some top picks and you have really a lot of flexibility with cap.
Yeah, I have the same answers. I think the Eagles is the worst job.
Yeah.
Because now you've saddled yourself with Carson Wentz. The number one thing they're going to ask is, can you work with him? And you're tied to him for better or for worse. They hung on to the GM that paid Carson Wentz. They are paying, their biggest contracts are with, like you said, aging veterans. they don't have a lot of capital and not much to look forward to. And you can't help but notice the one coach that's gotten them a Super Bowl is out. I do agree that the Chargers are the best. Justin Herbert, they lost so many close games, so they're so close. And I think they're just a few key pieces away, and they're going to be towards the top of the draft, so they should be accumulating those. So that's quite the job for someone to take over in LA. And you have all the brand new facilities, brand new franchise, and cornerstones at the picks you want. So I think the name of the game is going to be protecting Justin Herbert and continuing to build on defense and hopefully get some depth because, you had people get hurt. As for interesting that nobody is talking about, obviously it gets forgotten a lot. I think the Lions job doesn't get a lot of love, but you can go either way. Like, you can keep Stafford and look to re-sign Kenny Golladay and try to keep building off of that, or you can get a totally fresh start. So it's kind of like a weird in between, and I think that's fascinating. Same with the Falcons, along the same line. They're unique jobs in the sense, like, the Falcons have Matt Ryan, but everybody thinks they're also going to go quarterback, and then what do they do with Julio? Because they also have Calvin Ridley. So
I think the Lions,
all those are pretty fascinating.
And I think with the Lions and Falcons, as bad of a franchise as the Lions have been, you also have a little bit more runway with the Lions. It seems like, coaches just are not like a one and done type of thing. I think you have good ownership and good front office to say, hey, we're going to give you a few years to build, and even if you suck like Matt Patricia did, you'll see the writing on the wall. And I think the Texans are kind of in there. We haven't really talked about it because I'm sure we'll have either me or Roche or even Nick on whenever we choose our head coach or whoever it may be. But they have a franchise quarterback right now in Deshaun Watson, and they do have a left tackle. They do still have some holes that they need to fill. But hey, at the end of the day, you're in a football city. So,
all right, what are you feeling lately?
I think one of the things is the vaccine coming out. I think it's really cool. My wife Jackie, she was able to at least get the first dose, which is kind of cool. I know teachers are hopefully soon next, and that means Steph and what that looks like, especially for what they do and what they're able to give. So just seeing that vaccine come out and giving it to the frontline workers, not just in healthcare, but those that are really at the front lines, teachers, those at the grocery store, and those that have kind of kept things in some sort of sanity. So aside from that, I want to say the Pixar movie Soul. So those that have Disney Plus, if you know me, I love Pixar. I have a great affinity for Toy Story. Grew up with it. I think we all did. But Soul was such a beautiful movie with a hugely deep meaning about life and everything that comes with it. I don't want to give anything away because if you haven't seen it, go see it. Right after you finish this podcast, sit down, pop some popcorn or go to your local movie theater or get some and bring some home. I know you and I do that, but I just really recommend it. It hits in a lot of different ways. You may squirt a tear, you may cry, you may do all of that, but at the end of the day, the way Pixar has really just evolved and changed over time and really making this movie just fantastic. I don't know. I still am talking about it, and I've watched it 3 times so far.
Nice. Yeah, I really dug that movie. So since we last recorded, I needed to give a special shout out since this is a big hockey analysis and soccer analysis podcast. Columbus Crew SC won the MLS Cup. Go Crew, go Soccer.
Oh yeah.
#1 soccer fan. So shout out to them. And I want to shout out those frontline workers. We all know so many on the front lines fighting this pandemic, and now they're rightfully receiving their COVID vaccines. It's awesome to see. So there's a small little light at the end of the tunnel if everybody just continues to keep at all the social distancing, mask use, all the responsible behaviors. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just make sure we get there without suffering too much and seeing loved ones get sick. So I'm definitely feeling that. Anyway, I like to end each episode. It's time for my Too Much Sense, the advice you didn't think you needed. But it's become kind of a tradition. My first of the new year, I usually address this point, and it's about New Year's resolutions. You know my stance on it by now, you number one podcast listeners, but if you are doing a New Year's resolution, I need you to hear this. Good for you. If you're trying them, I dig any chance you can to better yourself. But I also want you to hear this in case you haven't. I need you to know that in case no one's told you lately, you are good enough and you don't need to have a resolution. But if you want to have one, good on you. There's always room to grow. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's not the end of the world if you slip up, if you get back to it. If you don't fully stick it out, but you intend to, it's all good. Let's make sure, especially, I usually address it every year with the gym folk. I know gyms aren't as popular, but I kind of use that analogy. We can't hate on things being inconvenient for us while other people are trying to better themselves. Just keep that in mind. You were once in that position, so I'm always here to remind you and encourage you. If you are bettering yourself, good for you. But please know that you don't have to. I'm just glad you want to.
Yeah, well said, man.
Anyway, we're back. I know I said this a lot. I apologize for the little hiatus. You know, I'm not going to make an excuse. It's a holiday. It's a time for a break. It's nice to step away every once in a while and just kind of shut things down.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're back regular. And I'm glad that you number one podcast listeners get the number one podcast back in your life, and I hope to continue delivering in 2021. I want to thank you, Vish, for joining the first episode of the new year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anything I do for the number one podcast listeners is all I can, even if it raises my blood pressure just a little bit.
Amen.
I'm happy to do it for all of those and for you, buddy. Love you, bud.
Love you. On that positive note, we will talk to you on the next edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee.